Hello and welcome to another episode of Next Iteration podcast. I'm here with Chans, and today we are going to talk to y'all and show you some demos of how not to use an AI assistant, and then we'll go on to show how to use an AI assistant to write clean code. Right? So that's what we're going to do today. So let's start then. And in the way that we will do it is that I am your host and I'll be the narrator, I'll be the commentator for this coding session. Chans is going to play the role of that developer who's writing code, and Chans will try and use the AI assistant as a coding partner, as an assistant. And Chans, while he is coding, he will also just think aloud what he is doing and what he expects the AI to do, and so on. So think of it as a coding session that Chans is doing with an AI assistant, and I am here to help you, the audience, make sense of what is happening and what is the sequence of strings that we are trying. So I'm your commentator. All right. So that's what we are going to do. So today, Chans is like the context is that Chans is, let's say, building a small game, coding for a game called FizzBuzz, and so that is the coding exercise that Chans is going to try. So, all right, Chans, then start your coding session.
Okay, thanks, Chirag. Hi, folks. I'll be using IntelliJ IDEA as my IDE. I have configured the JetBrains AI assistant as well. You see a Java 21 project which is open, and I have also configured the unit test to run as my configuration called UTs, which you see on the top right. Okay, let's ask the AI assistant if it knows what the FizzWuzz game is about, right? So let's give our very first prompt. Do you know what the FizzBuzz game is about? Let's see what it says. All right, it says it is familiar with the FizzBuzz game. It is giving us the rules, as you can see here, for numbers divisible by 3. If you input that number, what you get back would be called the word fizz. If the number is divisible by 5, you get back buzz. If the number is divisible by both 3 and 5, then you get fizz buzz. If it is not divisible by any of the above, then you would just get the number back as a string. Looks like the AI assistant has gone ahead and generated the code as well. Okay, I mean that would have been my next prompt for me to ask the AI assistant to like create the code for me. Now that we have the code, let's put our cursor at the right place and then create a file from the code snippet over here. Okay, looks like we have got the code already. Now let's run this. It's actually picked up the unit test that we have, and we don't have any unit tests created by the AI assistant. That's the first observation. So now let's actually run the main method to see if that works. Yeah, I see a rudimentary output coming up for a bunch of numbers from 1 to 100, and as expected, multiples of 3 are coming up as fizz, multiples of 5 are coming up as buzz, and multiples of 15 are coming up as fizz buzz. Um, yeah, Chirag, looks like I'm done.
Right. So, so folks, this is one way of using the AI assistant, right? So, the most, I suppose, this would be the dream come true way that you would just tell it to do something and it'll do it in a great way. But as we see, the what the code AI has written is very ordinary, right? Like it's written it
Yeah.
for a basic coding textbook. It's written everything in a main method. There are no unit tests. The code itself is fairly hard to read, and this is not the kind of code that you would like to check in into, into your repository under your name, right? So what is a better way of doing it? So this was approach one. Let's call this approach one, where
Yeah.
we just tell it to write code and don't tell it anything else. This, of course, isn't going to be satisfactory. So now let's go to another approach. So in this approach, Shans will give it a little bit more instructions for what he expects, code to look like and be like, and we'll see how well the assistant's able to follow that and what kind of code it creates with it. All right, back to you, Chance, on to your coding session.
Thanks, Chirag. Yeah, I mean, also there are println statements. So basically, this is not object oriented. This is not a reusable library. And I was disappointed that there are no tests as well. So yeah, a lot of code smells and very low maintainability and reusability here. So okay, let's take the next approach. Now, I don't want to give the full control to the AI. I want to give it some instructions on what I expect from the code. So I think the first step is for the AI to generate unit tests for me. Chirag, did you have anything to say?
No, go for it.
No. All right. All right. Right. Unit tests. Let that be our second prompt. Okay. So it's able to look at our open file. That is good. And now the fact that we are writing unit tests is forcing it to go to a better design. Yeah, this goes back to how you can drive your design with tests, because you always think contract first and you take baby steps. So what has happened is uh, now the implementation has moved on to a static method. Yeah, this is one improvement. So let's replace it. There is no way for AI to actually, I mean, as of now, with the chat window with the chat window approach, we don't have an elegant way for it to replace code. Yeah, there are other ways where you can do a command backslash and ask it to generate code. But again, it's going to generate new code, but not refactor your current code, or it wouldn't understand the full context. So yeah, let's copy paste it. That's a small friction. That's okay. Looks like there is a unit test class, and now we need to again move the cursor manually to the test package, and let's create the file from snippet so that the test sits in the right place. Okay, looks like decent tests have been written. I have a few observations on this myself. There are multiple assert statements within the same test, so the tests are a little bit fat, but at least looks like all the main flows in terms of divisible by 15, divisible by 3 only, divisible by 5 only, and not divisible have been covered. And because we already have our unit tests configured, let's run that configuration so that all the tests will be run. And let's actually see whether all the tests pass, and they do pass. Yeah, I'm still not happy with the implementation yet, uh, because this is just a static method, and I don't see the need for a class here. It could as well be a global context. So I want to go back to the AI assistant and tell it that, hey, the fizzbuzz class has just a static method. Do you think that's object oriented? Let's see if it agrees with my observation. Okay, it has come back with a lot of text. We can read that. And let's see if anything has changed. Yeah, it's taken a bigger step forward. I didn't actually mean that I wanted to implement the series of numbers. I still want to input one number and get whether the equivalent string is fizz or buzz or fizz buzz or the actual number. So let me prompt it again. Can you just limit? Can you limit the refactoring to one number and not a series yet. I don't want to over engineer my solution yet. I want to ensure it works for one number first. Okay, looks like my prompt has worked this time. And we have some code again. So let's copy this to the clipboard, go to our source file, and replace the entire file, right? And now if you see it, you have a constructor, and then you have the number as a constructor argument, and then once you have the number as a field, I see that final is missing because then the number could mutate outside the constructor. That's one smell. I see some magic numbers here, 3 and 5. Those could be better off as methods, but overall it's a decent improvement. But you can already see 8 related problems. Maybe I don't know if this is my expectation, but by default I would have expected that if the source code changed, then I would need a test to change as well. All right, I think the AI assistant has sensed that. So let's copy the new tests and go to our test file, and again let's replace everything because that's how it works as of now. All right, now things are compiling. Let's run our test suite again, and now all the tests pass. So yeah, not completely happy, but this is a step forward. Yeah, Chirag, back to you.
Yeah. All right. So, could you go into presentation mode, Chance,
Yeah, do
as
that.
we talk about this code? So, so now let's look at the code. So let's start with the test file first,
Yeah, yeah.
and you can see that the tests are decent. They are, decently named, and they cover more or less the important scenarios. So the test it has generated after the prompts is decent. And then if you go to the source code, the source code's also all right. I mean, but like Chans was also reflecting, it has like it's doing this modulo operation on 3 and comparing it with 0, modulo on 5 comparing it with 0. So there is that kind of lack of clarity about what the code can express its intent better, and then there is some code duplication and so on. So
Comments as well,
uh,
Chirag. Yeah.
yeah, there are comments that it has left in the code, and and so on. So but anyways, like this is approach 2. You can see that approach 2 is better than approach 1. So when you just let it do everything without enough of guardrails, then the output isn't good. And but as you start to prompt it, then it will improve its output to write better code. uh, because what's important is that it's not just code that works, but it is code that is maintainable and understandable for humans later on as well. But okay, so this is method 2, and one thing to note is that this method required several interactions with the AI agent on chat. It required Chans, as the developer in this case, to tell it 4 5 different things, right? Initially it wrote some code, then you had to say, if you start from the top, Chans, right, you had to
Yeah.
initially tell it to
Right,
write
unit tests.
write tests. Then when it wrote tests, you had to say, you had to copy paste files back into the right place. Then you had to say, can you make it more object oriented, remove static. Then you had to say, then it did something completely unexpected, which was like trying to write a program for running from 1 to 100. Then you had to say, don't do that yet, I want to instead do this. So there was a lot of that constant guiding that you had to do
Yeah.
through chat, and which which was time consuming because there was so much English that you had to type, and then so much copy pasting that you had to do in the right place, and so on. But this is the second approach, and you can see that this second approach is better than the first approach. This at least is the kind, is somewhat acceptable code that you might be happy to check in under your name as a developer. But there is a better there is an even better way to do this in our experience, and that's the third approach that we will now move to.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
and
one more
and
observation on the second approach, Chirag. I actually feel that it degraded the unit test quality.
mm,
Earlier, though the tests were slightly bigger, it was testing for a lot more test cases.
mm.
Now, when we moved forward, it
Oh,
it
it lost.
basically cut down
Oh,
the
it
code
lost some
coverage by
scenarios.
50%.
Yeah, it lost some scenarios. And that's what, so like if you're not paying attention, it could just lose scenarios between a couple of, so you try to give it a prompt to make the code more object oriented, and in that process it lost some test scenarios. And
Yeah,
this is the kind of risk with approach 2, because you're allowing it to make wholesale changes to an
yeah.
entire file, and so you have to be careful while accepting the change that it's not regressed on anything. Yeah,
All right.
that's yeah. Okay, so that's approach 2. Now we will go to the third way of doing it, which in our experience is the better way of doing it. So again, back to
Hmm,
Chance to drive it, and then again we will pause at the end of this approach to
hmm.
share with you what we observe to be the benefits of this approach.
All right. Thanks, Chirag. So let me create the test first, and I'll go to presentation mode this time. I promise. I think managing the AI assistant window and presentation mode is slightly new for me. Let's call it FizzBuzz
And Chance,
test.
as you start, I just want to clarify for everyone that you just deleted the existing,
Oh
like
yeah,
all the code that we had so far, right? So you're
yes,
starting,
yeah,
you've deleted all the files that we had so far.
yeah. There are
Yeah.
no
So
tests
you are
as well.
going
Yeah,
to now start again. Okay, go for it, Chance.
yeah. Thank you, Chirag. Thanks for the prompt. All right. Let's get back this window. Let's hide this unit test window for now. Cool. I want to create the test. Let's name it well because naming signals the intent very clearly. I'll call it FizzBuzz test. Now I'll get into presentation mode. Okay. I want to add test to this. So let me guide the AI for the very first test, and I want to again name my test methods well to like clarify the intent, and I also want to use my test to drive the design. So I'm going to take baby steps, which is the norm in TDD or the test driven development. So let's write this test quite quickly. We are going to use JUnit. The expected value should be a string of one, as we all know. Let's use a class called FizzBuzz, create an object of that. Let the constructor take in the number and let the method be something simple called say. Now let's start adding the required imports. You will see that the code is not compiling yet. So let's add the source file first, which we are doing. Uh, let's name the constructor argument also well. Right. Now coming back, I think you would have observed me say naming quite a bit. Yeah, naming is hard, but it's very important for us to create a human readable code. Okay, looks like the code is compiling, so I'll not take further steps and I'll quickly run my tests. Okay, the test failed. Let's see if it failed for the right reason. Yeah, it did. We did expect one. So let's go and pass the test. It'll be the most trivial implementation. So I'll remove this and start typing. Let's see what happens. Okay, I'm typing this in. This should pass the test. So I'll go back here, run it. It passed, right? So let's write one more test so that we can fail the code, right? And actually prior to that, let's refactor the code. Nothing to refactor. Run the tests again. We are in green. So okay, I'm getting a prompt from the AI assistant to say add a test for number three. I'm not going to accept it yet. I actually want to add a test for the number two to say two for two. Now let's see if it picks up what I'm trying to type. All right, I'm getting a code completion from the AI assistant to actually write the code for this test. This looks good. I'm going to accept it and then run the test to see if it failed for the right reason. It did. Expected was 2, but we have hard coded 1 there. So let's go back now and implement the code here. So what do we do? The most simplistic thing is to say, I'm going to return the string of the number, but we don't have the number as a field yet. It's only taken in the constructor. So let's go ahead and use the good old code refactoring to add a field which actually makes it private and final. That is good, which we had missed in the approach 2. And now let's try to return that as a string. Cool, I'm getting some auto completion from AI, which is appreciated. So let's run the test now. The test pass. Looks simple. Now I think is when we need to write the third test. At this point, I'll start using the annotation test and see if the AI assistant can help me. Awesome. It's saying safe is for 3. Perfect. I had that in mind. It's now saying I need the word fizz. If I pass in 3, perfect. Let's run this and see if the test failed for the right reason. Yeah, expected is fizz, but we are just returning the number as a string. So it does fail. So now I'll go back and implement this. All right, the AI assistant knows what I'm thinking. It's trying to check if the number is divisible by 3, and if so, it would return fizz. Great. So now let's run this. The test is passing. Now time to refactor. So let's use the option to refactor this code to make it more elegant, ensure it's formatted, run the tests again. Looks good so far. Yeah, maybe I think it's time to refactor more. 3 is a magic number. So let's express our intent well as per the Beck design rules. I'm going to extract a method and say is divisible by 3 and run all the tests again. So mind you, all the tests are running, which you can see 3 of 3 tests. And if I show this, all the tests you will see are running, right? So cool. Now, the next logical step for me is to test a multiple of 3. I see a completion choice to go to 5. I'm not going to take that. I will add a test to say fizz for a multiple of 3 and then see if I get any prompts. Not yet. Am I getting a prompt? Awesome. It knows 6 is a multiple of 3. This test should pass, yeah, as expected. And now, all right, I think I'm going to accept this suggestion because it's,
Chance, could you pause just for
yeah,
a second here for me to add some commentary
yeah, sure.
for our viewers? So one thing to note in this approach is that because Chun started with the first test and he wrote the first test by hand, gave it a name, say one for one, and wrote the expectation in the way he would prefer to write it, assert equals, one comma, and then actual. Define the contract of the fact that Fizzbuzz, the constructor should take a number and the method should be called say. So in that way, with the first test, uh, he uh, defined the contract and he defined the pattern for how a test should look and be written. And then from that point onwards, you've noted that the AI assistant is quite good at following a pattern that is set in the code base.
Hmm.
So when it started to, when Chance started to write the next test and to say that the test is say two for two, then it got it and then it, mimicked the first test and wrote it in that way. So that is a big win,
Hmm.
because now like the human, the developer who knows how to write good code is leading the process here, and AI is following the best practice that the human is setting. So that's important to note. The other thing is that as the developer, Chans is following test-driven development, which sort of asks for developers to take small steps, baby steps, and keep running these very fast and frequent loops of writing a test, seeing it fail for
Hmm.
the right reason, then writing just enough code to pass the test, then seeing it pass, and then finally uh, check going back to the code to see if there are any opportunities to express intent better, any ways to refactor and remove duplication, and so on. And then doing that step, seeing that the test still passes, and then going on to write the next failing test. So he's been using that approach, which for so many years, developers who care about writing clean code have adopted that test driven development approach. And again, while still using the AI assistant, he is choosing to and is able to follow that preferred test driven development approach. And the AI assistant is then able to follow along and add these code completions very quickly in the test.
Hmm.
Or you saw AI assistant also being able to add code completion in the fizzbuzz classes itself for what the logic is.
Yeah.
And so like you can see that he's still halfway into implementing it, but everything that's written so far is nice and clean and easy to read and easy to understand, and has good coverage of all the scenarios so far. So that's my sort of set of observations about this approach so far. And now let's chance back to you to continue your coding session.
Awesome. Thanks, Chirag. Thank you. All right. Okay. I just pressed enter. It's saying tap to complete, and it's saying should say buzz for phi. It's expecting buzz when I pass in phi. It's great. I would have just expected to get an empty line, but that's okay. I can refactor here. All right. Let's run the new test and see if it fails for the right reason. Yeah, it does. That's a good sign. Let's go back to the implementation. And now uh, at this point, I would want to continue the same pattern and say if is divisible by phi, then return buzz, which I got as an auto completion hint. I'll take that. I would have expected it, like even the method to be followed. That's okay. This is a good start. Now we don't have the method, so we need to create one. Let's create it. It's a private boolean. Looks good to me. The name looks good. It says return false as of now, so let's implement that. All right, I'm getting our auto completion hint again. So thank you, AI. Let's run this. Looks good. I can do some formatting here. Run the tests again. Looks good. I'm happy with this so far. Yeah, maybe just to be really clean, let's move the divisible by 3 up and then run all the tests again, which should run nicely. Now let's go back and take the next step, which is not going to 15 yet. So I'm not going to use that. I will add a test to say buzz for, as you would have guessed, for a multiple. I'm typing slowly to see if it picks up on what I'm doing. Maybe if I've written the method already, it might have. I've seen that happen. So yeah, say buzz for a multiple of 5. And is it picking up what to write? It does. Awesome. So buzz, if I pass in 10, looks good. Let's run all the tests. All the tests pass. I'm going to collapse all the tests so we can read it as I'm going forward. Now let's go to the next case. Yeah, correctly we are getting a prompt to write, to say fizz buzz for 15. I do like the name. I like the way the arrange act assert format is followed, which is very consistent. So let's do this and let's ensure that we format the code to have that extra line. Let's collab this as well and run it to see if the test fails for the right reason again. Yeah, it's returning fizz because it's passing the very first test. 15 is like divisible by 3 as well. So I'm going to go in here and add this logic. I'll type in a bit slowly to see if AI assistant picks up on what I'm trying to do. Awesome. So it says if it's divisible by 3 and divisible by 5, which is essentially divisible by 15, but this is more readable and it already reuses the methods where we have expressed intent, and it's easy to understand as well. It's saying return fizzbuzz in the same format as the other two if conditions. So this looks good. The test pass. but let's format this a bit and run the tests again. They pass expectedly. No other opportunities to refactor code here. Still looks quite clean. Let's complete this exercise by writing one last test. Awesome. I think the AI assistant understood what we are trying to do. It says say fizzbuzz for a multiple of 15 just for completeness, and it's passing in 30. It's great. No empty line yet. So let's reformat it, collapse the test, run it. Should pass and does pass. Yeah, Chirag, back to you.
Yeah, so this is how the approach 3 looks, and as if you sort of zoom out and see what has happened is that, like I said, Chans has been able to follow test-driven development. He's been able to take baby steps. He's been able to take a lead on defining the contracts. He's been able to take a lead on showing AI what a good test looks like. He's been able to do the red green refactor cycle and apply himself to identify what is the next logical test to write, which scenario is it important to cover, what are the baby steps to cover all the scenarios. And at each of those steps the AI assistant is being this invisible partner that he doesn't need to talk to and keep prompting and keep telling it to do this, to do that. Instead, AI assistant ends up being this sort of person in the back, this entity in the background that is happy to provide autocomplete suggestions. In that, it's up to chance to accept it if it's meaningful, or reject it and write his own thing if it's not meaningful. But if you have observed in this coding session, probably the AI assistant has written 60, 70, 80% of the code. uh, but
Hmm.
I mean, 80% of the times Chance has maybe accepted the suggestions
Hmm.
from AI assistant. Uh, uh, you know but but still it would feel to Chance that this is his code because he has been
Yeah.
leading it throughout, and he has been deciding the sequence in which to write the test, and he's been deciding the contracts, he's been deciding how the say method implementation needs to look, and so on. He's been taking that step to refactor at every stage. And we believe that this is the right way of using an AI assistant. And especially JetBrains Assistant is doing a really good job at doing the right thing without prompting.
Hmm.
And that is important. I mean, if you have to spend a lot of time prompting the AI assistant, then you might as well, like as enable coder, write code instead of writing English, multiple times to get it right. So yeah, so those are my observations as an observer about why this approach, the third approach, which is let the human be in the driver's seat and AI should be in the background. Primarily, we rely on auto completion recommendations that it's provide. Many a times they will be right, sometimes they will not be right. In which case, even if you still just type in a few characters, like 5 characters, 7 characters, then it will get it right as to what is the next sort of logical thing to autocomplete. And it is just a huge productivity boost, but it's not coming at the cost of AI taking over and writing whatever
Hmm.
code that it feels is yeah, will work. So it's still human writing code for humans to read and understand later on, with AI assistant as being just that, an assistant who's in the background and not getting into the driver's seat and not getting into the foreground.
Yeah,
What
Chirag.
did you feel about this experience, Chance, on approach 3?
Yeah, for me, Chirag, as a developer, the first thing I depend upon is a very good IDE. That is where idea shines very well. And I feel already the IDE is doing many of the heavy lifting, because I'm like used to shortcuts. And the next big thing is, you would have seen me do some refactoring as well. So I think once you understand refactoring, that again is helping a lot in productivity. And like the way the unit test suite is set up, and the way that you can run it often and figure out, you would have never seen me debug at all. And that's a curse for a developer, that we spend so much time in debugging. So already there were two tools in my arsenal. And now having the JetBrains AI assistant, based on my initial analysis, it's very frictionless, because I don't need to go into this chat window, though it is in the IDE. I mean, as we saw in the beginning, I couldn't even get to the full screen mode. I need to paste code there. I need to think more in English and prompt engineering and all of that. Ensure that context is carried, and copy back the code from there to my IDE. And I just feel like a bit overwhelmed there. So especially when doing coding from scratch, I prefer this method where I'm using the AI assistant as a pair. And when you get auto completion seamlessly as part of your code, which you can accept or decline. There could be other methods as well, where you can do the command backslash and then ask it to generate code within the IDE. But again, this feels the most natural to me. And I do agree. Want to be in control, because I feel that I know the domain a lot more, and I know what is required for the business even. And but when AI is writing a lot of the code without much errors and without much typos, that is helping me quite a bit. And in some cases, it's probably doing a better job than me as well, in terms of like writing the sequence of code, or maybe using a data structure and all of that. So that way, I'm quite happy. And like you said, I do agree. Maybe almost 50% of your code. And if you know what you want, and if you are comfortable still making decisions, and that way, JetBrains AI assistant. And then, like, actually, like for me, writing code is not only about writing code. It's about writing code which may last for the next 5 years, and being and then getting the confidence that it can be read by any other person on my team, and they need not talk to me as much. So when I write code, I ensure that I write tests so people can come and look at this test, and this becomes a live documentation. And when they go into the code, there are no comments, there are no cryptic names, and it's optimized for humans to read. And if AI is helping me there, I think that's a good start, Chirag.
Yeah, but so the a quick sort of comparison of the three approaches. Approach
Oh.
one, we asked AI to just write code, and it wrote
Hmm.
pretty horrendous code. Everything in a main block, and system out
Static.
print
Hmm.
lines, and stuff like that. Then we asked it, like, we had to give it four, five, six prompts before it got it into some like slightly better shape, but it was still not elegant, and not quite good enough. And then so that was approach two. And then with approach three, we didn't go to prompt the AI at all. We just Chans, as the developer, just took the lead and showed the way, and made decisions about contract, about which scenarios to test for, and where and what kind of code to write, and what refactorings to do. And then AI assistant silently from the background kept making autocomplete suggestions, and they were many of them were really useful. And but this is, in our opinion, the way to write clean code with AI. And
Hmm.
clean code is the keyword here.
Yeah.
That's what we should be aiming for, to write clean code with the help of AI assistants. All right, so that was our attempt to show you how we would do it with the tools that we have available today. Hope that was useful. We'd be happy to hear from you if you've had other ways that have worked well for you. Uh, Signing off then. Bye bye.